Ron Johnson. Senator Johnson, thanks. It's good to see you this morning. So I just want to specifically understand what your objection is to this. It could be that it's just such a big number to saddle our children with that you don't want to do it, or it could be that it's going to people that haven't been as impacted. It's not targeted enough to the right people. Let's say there was a way to get that $2,000 just to the people that were really in need. Would you be for it at that point, or you just are going to be against it because of adding to the deficit no matter what?
No, you just explained the reasons. It's not targeted. It's add another $464 billion onto our already enormous debt that's out of control and unsustainable. And so the fact that we've had 9 months to take a look at what happened with the last stimulus checks, by the way, about 18% of that was spent on essential items. The rest was spent on either non-essential items or paying off debt or additional savings. So it certainly wasn't stimulative. I certainly want to help people that are financially struggling through no fault of their own because of COVID. It's one of the reasons I voted for the $2.2 trillion CARES Act. We've now appropriated, we've authorized about $4 trillion of aid, but we did it in a shotgun approach. And we don't have an unlimited checking account. We're $27.5 trillion in debt. By the end of this fiscal year, it'll be over $29 trillion. And I keep hearing $2,000 checks. If you have a family of four, it'll be an $8,000 check. A family of five, $10,000 check. And many of those individuals have been working. They're getting a paycheck. They're not financially struggling. Why would we be giving checks to people that truly don't need it? So, again, we should have gone back to the drawing board. We should have really targeted this relief. By the way, people are already going to get, a family of four is going to get $2,400 in the relief bill that was just passed. It was a $900 billion relief package. So it's just the lack of targeting, the lack of thoughtful consideration given to mortgaging our children's future by another $464 billion. I know it sounds good. It feels good to give away money. Everybody loves benefits. Somebody's got to be thinking about how, the effect of this on our future generations. Yeah, the case has been made that we need to, the Fed, politicians, policymakers need to do more and not necessarily worry as much about whether it gets exactly where it needs to go, but just sort of, as you said, use a shotgun approach. Is it better to err on the side of frugality when some people will not be helped? Or would it be better to maybe worry about this? We're hearing a lot of that. Let's worry about this later. We can run deficits. Well, again, people already will get $600 checks individually, $2,400 for a family of four. If you're unemployed, you'll get a $300 plus up to your state unemployment benefits. So there's a lot of targeted relief. We're throwing $300 billion into PPP loans so those businesses can keep people employed. So we're throwing a lot of money at the problem and not paying any attention whatsoever to the mounting debt that is simply unsustainable. The Journal's been really sort of angry at, I don't know whether you can call op-ed people angry, but they don't like the president's move here. They think that it might be sabotaging what happens down in Georgia with the way that it's played out. What are your feelings on whether the president has actually hurt the Republican senators' reelection chances down there, or what exactly is going on? And I've heard rumors that you've said some things that you feel like you're in a tough spot, both defending the president, but maybe when there's times where you don't think it's necessarily the right thing to be doing. I don't know whether those reports were true, but just give me a They weren't.
They weren't true?
No, it was a phone call I made to somebody that was an anti-Trumper and had a 30-minute argument, and then the guy writes an article about it. I wouldn't believe a word he said. So anyway, the bottom line is the politics, this is kind of hard to sort out. From my standpoint, we absolutely have to win those two Georgia Senate seats, or what Democrats will do with the United States Senate, they'll change it forever. They'll get rid of the filibuster, which means they'll pass every bill on Bernie Sanders and AOC's wish list. They'll pack the Supreme Court. They'll pack the circuit courts. They'll pack the U.S. Senate. They'll turn D.C. and Puerto Rico into states, pretty well assuring 4 more Democrat senators. I mean, they will change every rule. They will violate every norm, every precedent to make sure they'll always maintain power. I think it's a very dangerous step that we would be taking if we lose those Senate seats and Chuck Schumer becomes the next majority leader. You work with Joe Manchin, right?
Yes, I do.
when he says he's not going to go for some of those more radical ideas, do you take him at his word, or do you think you think if he had enough pressure from his party that because a lot of people, some people even say the stock market is taking solace in some of his comments because they think the worst case scenario is taken off the table?
The pressure would be enormous. I don't think people can even begin to understand the pressure on Joe Manchin if he were the holdout at eliminating the filibuster and preventing the Green New Deal being passed. So, he may mean it. I'm not sure he could withstand the pressure, quite honestly.
Trump
I don't think it's
West
worth
Virginia.
It's not worth taking the chance. Let's put it that way.
Trump won West Virginia by like 800 points. And how could Manchin, after making that promise, how could he go back to his constituents at that point?
Well, it's not just about getting reelected. It's just the viciousness. It's about the viciousness and the threats that come in modern day politics. It's incredibly unfortunate. It's one of the problems that I've certainly perceived. One of the reasons I held a hearing on election irregularities. It's an unsustainable state of affairs where you have such a large majority of the American population. First, for the last 4 years, not agreeing that the 2016 result was legitimate. Now you've got, on the other side, tens of millions of people not believing this election result was legitimate. Our politics are poisonous today. It's just an unsustainable state of affairs.
Hey, Senator Hawley has said that he is going to object to the certification of the Electoral College votes next week, at least in some states. At that point, you as a senator will be required to go through the debate for a couple of hours and then vote on whether you think all 50 states' Electoral College votes should be certified. How will you vote?
Well, first of all, this is done on a state-by-state basis. As I keep trying to tell people that, there's a lot of misinformation on both sides, that some people on our side think that if just one House member, one senator objects, it immediately goes to a vote of the states. And then because we have more states in the House of Representatives, Trump can get reelected. That's not what happens. What happens is every member of the Senate, every member of the House votes to either accept or reject that state's slate of electors. I can't imagine any scenario in which any House Democrats will vote to reject Joe Biden electors. So I think the result is inevitable, but I don't have a problem, as I demonstrated in holding a hearing on the irregularities of the 2020 election, of examining those, discussing them. I actually support what Leader McConnell suggested as a commission set up to examine this. This issue's not going away. There are irregularities that have not been explained. I don't fear information. I know a lot of people say, oh, this is dangerous. It's not dangerous to take a look at problems that did occur, the lack of transparency in too many places, the lack of an audit trail. We need to examine this and hopefully set new rules or pass new laws to correct this for the next election. This is an unsustainable state of affairs in the body politic.
Looking at things and deciding to change it for the next election is one thing, but my question was, would you vote no on any state to not certify their Electoral College results for this election?
Well, one of the things I've been trying to do since I announced my hearing 3 weeks ago is we've been looking at all these irregularities. We've explained many. We haven't explained others. And so I don't know what new evidence is going to be coming up between now and the 6th. I have a hard time believing that there's going to be something earth-shattering. People have been looking at this, but it completely depends on which states and what the issues are in terms of what is being objected to.
Senator, go ahead, Beck. You want to get him to say something? Go ahead. I was going to say.
Well, I guess it's a maybe. I mean, you'll see if there's anything that comes up between now and then you'll decide if you vote to certify the Electoral College on a state-by-state basis.
Again, on a state-by-state basis in terms of what the issues, and there's some real serious issues in states like Pennsylvania, where apparently the voter rolls are not being reported by the counties 10 weeks later, a lack of transparency. There are other issues that I simply can't get to the bottom of, and we've been looking into this we've really been looking into this. It's hard to get to the bottom of it. There's a lack of transparency, and that's what's so frustrating to people, at least on the conservative side, Trump supporters. They're not getting the answers. They've completely lost confidence in the mainstream media, the social media, the incredible bias. And so there's this feeling that this election was stolen, that it's not fair, that there's all kinds of fraud. And by the way, Chris Krebs testified in our hearing, said it's the most secure election, but admitted in our hearing he was only talking about cyber attacks. He wasn't talking about fraud. And of course, that was all that his comments were taken as this is a clean election. It wasn't a totally clean election. Let's be honest about this, and let's not be afraid of gathering information and making things right.
So, Senator, if it is just as to posit this, if it were to be a divided government, would you at that point expect Republicans and Democrats to start horse trading? Maybe get Republicans want to extend the tax cuts, Democrats want infrastructure. Do you think it could work at that point, or it sounds like you don't want to spend any more money on anything if you don't have to? What about infrastructure?
Well, we've just witnessed $4 trillion of bipartisan cooperation. I don't think we had to allocate and authorize $4 trillion to address the COVID crisis. We need to spend some, which is why I supported $2.2 trillion that we did fast. We did it massively so that markets wouldn't collapse. I mean, we had to do that. I don't think even at that point in time it had to be $2.2 trillion, but we just had to lard out another $900 billion. Now people are talking about another $464 billion. Like, this is monopoly money. It's not. This is a mortgaging of our children's future. There is going to be a point in time when we have a debt crisis, and it is not going to be pretty. But here in Washington, D.C., it's like nobody cares. You know, I came here in 2011. Our debt was $14 trillion. Now it's basically doubled, and there's no end in sight. Somebody has to be concerned about this. We ought to be worried about it. We ought to be husbanding our resources. And when we do spend money and when we deficit spend, we better do that quite carefully. And nobody is right now. It's a very sad state of affairs.
We're going to talk to Section 230 a little bit later. I just switching topics again. What do you think we should do? That's part of this. Obviously, Leader McConnell put it into the calculus of this latest negotiation for the $2,000. But do you think next year something happens with that? Will that be bipartisan?
Yeah, the social media companies have amassed way too much power. And the Section 230 really, in my mind, has two parts. One needs to be retained, and that's giving them liability protection from people that upload data onto their platforms. And by the way, I think they do a pretty good job of censoring, like ISIS snuff videos and those types of things, and we should let them do that. But the other part of that is their social or their moderation policies, and basically their censorship. They need to be completely transparent in terms of what their policies are on censorship, and if they don't follow those policies, they ought to be sued. So that's the Section 230 liability protection that I would remove on their censorship, on their moderation policies. But you need to separate in two things and retain the liability protection for people uploading onto their platforms.
Senator, thanks for all the time this morning. We will,
Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Happy New Year. Let's hope 2021 is a lot better than 2020.
Yes, we do, and we hope we see you maybe in January. We'll keep don't make a lot of outgoing calls. We're going to be calling.
Take care.
All right, thanks. See you. Back.